BSides Cincinnati.
So, if that's of interest to you, you'll want to hang out for that. So I'll have a few things to give away at the end, and then they'll be after that. But our final talk, our final scheduled talk, is Mark Jeanmougin from Vantive.
All right, thank you very much. So, can you guys hear me okay? If you can't hear me, raise your hand. If you believe in telekinesis, raise my hand. Okay, one day that's going to work and it will be awesome. Today is not the day. So, what I'm here to talk about, and I apologize in advance, I am going to walk around, I will ask you questions. I'm also going to ask if you see the person next to you sleeping with drool coming out of one side of their mouth, please give their head a gentle push so it comes out of both sides. Even drool is very important. I will ask you questions. Oh, they said I have to stay in front of the whiteboard. So hi to the people in the bar. We will be joining you shortly, I promise. So why am I here? Two reasons, actually. The first and foremost is that I hope to give a presentation today which inspires. It inspires in two different ways. The first one, I hope you guys take a look at the presentation that I give and think to yourself, I can do better than that. And then next year, you come out and give a better presentation. And then all of a sudden next year, the 2017 BSides is a little better than the 2016. So that would be great. But the big thing I'm going to talk about is Active Directory and passwords. So who is in an environment where they have Active Directory? And who has a password for their Active Directory account? Of course, we all do. And guess who else knows this? All of our adversaries. And so they utilize that as part of their attack platform. So, yeah. I'm generally not going to read the slides, so read them yourselves. If there's actually, and it's hard to say this with a straight face, if there's actually enough interest in what I put together, I will make it available. I found that doubtful, but we'll see how it goes. So, what are we going to, so, this is a presentation that I put together for my company. And they've asked me not to use their name today, which tells you just how excited they were about it. So I'm basically going to use that as a framework to talk to you guys and inspire you guys. What I want you guys to take away from this is to look at this presentation and go, well, like there's no background graphics, there's no company name, it's kind of a shitty PowerPoint deck. But I want you guys to look at this and realize you could take this presentation and give it to your own company. And then I want you guys to be able to inspire your own companies to move from a compliant password standard to a secure password standard. And I'm going to give you guys the math that will help you make that case. So, most companies use Active Directory for single sign-on. Most companies also layer that behind some other single sign-on product. Does that feel right? Do people have an additional single sign-on product on top of AD or alongside AD? Yeah, okay. So, I was asked to put together a Who Am I slide, and then someone told me no one cares. But if anyone does, I've been in IT for a long time. I started at CompUSA, which is now out of business, selling. I was there for the Windows 95 launch party in October. It was kind of crazy. Since then, I've worked at Mosler Safe Company, which is also out of business now. And then I've worked for a fair number of companies, most of which you are probably customers of. So thank you very much. I appreciate your business. Oh yeah, dark side, I'm in management now. It kind of sucks when they take the good technical people, at least that's the way I like to think of myself, and put them in the management roles, but here I am. I have a link up to my blog, kind of for humor purposes. It was updated in 2015, so it's right there. Okay, obligatory Verizon DBIR slide. The most recent DBIR says that passwords are adorable. But the thing that I think you guys can take away from this to talk to your companies about is that attackers don't just bypass the passwords, they use them against us. They use our own passwords against us. What does that mean? Once they compromise our environment and get that foothold, then they take those password hashes, they crack those password hashes, and then they use those for lateral movement. So by having a weak password standard, or by having a compliant password standard, Shutter, or by not using multi-factor authentication, we make our jobs a whole lot easier for the adversaries. So by following the best practices put together by the PCI Council and some of the other groups, we're making things easier for our adversaries. I think that's a pretty good talking point that you guys can use with your companies. I have a note up here to talk about phishing campaigns. That's come up with a couple of the other presentations. Does anybody know what this 1/30 is that I'm representing? Who?
Metric, 1 out of 30.
Yes, and so define success.
People click.
Wrong. Even worse.
People input their credits.
Nope. So, yeah, guess? People who reported. 1 of 30 campaigns are reported to their InfoSec people. So this is based off of companies like FishMe and, what is it, Wombat? So the legitimate phishing companies that our employers pay for to use to phish our own employees, they went through, I think it was about 8 million actual phishing emails. And then those were grouped in X number of campaigns. 1 of 30 campaigns are reported to InfoSec. So the next time you get that email from that diligent user, and we all have that one user, that reports a phishing campaign, remember there are probably 30 other campaigns that didn't get reported. The other thing I want to call out, the 3 minutes and 45 seconds is the median time it takes for a phished employee to report the fact that they were phished. To me, the biggest thing that I take away from that metric is that my employees are a lot more on top of their email than I am. So, next thing we're going to talk about, single sign-on. We got a system to standard. So, why do we have single sign-on? The security benefit, it's hard to say with a straight face. So, the idea with the security benefit there is that by having one password on our machines that browse the internet, and using that same password to access our company's most critical data, we've somehow made things more secure. I'm not sure I follow, but that's what the sales guys say, and sales guys don't lie. The end user benefit, apparently, end users are really bad at remembering passwords. And so by having them only remember one password, that makes things a whole lot easier for the end user. Yes, so for those people that do have their secure ID tokens, we do have a PIN that you have to remember that goes along with that. So yes, so you've got your single sign-on password you use for Active Directory, you've got your PIN for secure ID token, and then you've got the site or password you have to use for your travel site. Yeah. Yep, you have that. Yep. So we've got this great single sign-on system here, so that our users really only have about 40 passwords that they have to remember. Again, I redacted this. Who could put together a slide like this for their own employer? Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah. So we can all put this presentation together. This is not hard. I didn't take Latin in high school, but I believe it's quattrodecim sign-on is where we're at right now. So yay, we spent lots of money. We've got probably a dozen employees that work on our department that maintains the single sign-on product. They really hated this slide, but whatever. So this is more of a management thing or for your less technical people, but it can be helpful to digress and go down that path of how does your computer actually store passwords? So you can have plain text, you can have a encrypted password, or you can have a hashed password. If you have any sort of app dev people in that, audience that you can talk to, have that conversation with them on the difference between an encrypted password and a hashed password. A lot of your app dev people that are, you can't call them dumb, but that are writing their own authentication modules, they're going to encrypt the end user's password. Bad idea. So your hashing is that one-way mathematical function. That encryption is that two-way reversible function. So if they are encrypting their passwords for any internally developed applications, they've made their jobs harder and made your security posture weak. It's a whole lot easier to do an LDAP query to Active Directory, let AD handle all that kind of stuff, makes it a whole lot easier on the end user while making things more secure. So, I am going to get into password cracking because I thought it was kind of fun. I thought it was going to be kind of easy, but we're not quite there yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about math. So what is password cracking? It's basically a process whereby you've got your password hashes, and then you've got some sort of process that knows the hashing algorithm used, and then it just starts with, is your password A? No. Is password B? No. Is your password C? No. Keeps moving on until it finds the right thing. It's basically like giving your 7-year-old in the back seat on a trip to Florida the chance to try it. So, a couple different ways to do password cracking. First one is brute force. This is the one that I actually explore a little deeper in the rest of the presentation because it's really stupid and it's really slow. Brute force is really the slowest way to convert password hashes into plain text. The next one you can use is a dictionary, whereby you literally get an English dictionary. If you do business in France, you get a French dictionary. If you do business in Lithuania, you do a Lithuanian dictionary. If you have nerds, you do Star Trek dictionaries. You put them all together. And then you just hash those words and see if you get any matches. A hybrid does things like adds a 0 to the end. In Cincinnati, a hybrid attack may take words like Bengals and adds words like sucks and puts them together and see if you can get anything. It'll do substitutions where it takes E's and replaces them with 3's, O's replaces them with 0's, uppercase, lowercase, all kinds of things like that. The hybrid attack is generally your most effective and your fastest. The pre-computed is also called your rainbow tables. And the idea there is that you pre-hash every word in your dictionary. You pre-hash, actually not just every word in your dictionary, everything you can think of. And you pre-hash those, just store the hashes, and then you can do database lookups. In theory, this is the fastest. You're trading CPU power for storage space. One of the guys on my team gave me shit for doing the brute force. He's like, dude, I can do the rainbow tables. It'll be so much faster. You'll never stand a chance. I'm like, okay. So I gave him a box. I gave him a bunch of hard drives. I said, set it up. Let's see how it goes. He never got it working. So apparently rainbow tables is a little bit harder to set up. So how to crack? Not nearly as easy as it sounds. If you want the detail, so this is the presentation again I gave to basically non-technical people as a way to try to get the password policy changed. Talking to you guys, if you want the details on this, I can certainly provide them. But really what I would suggest is creating an AD test environment. And pro tip, use the same version of AD that you're using in production. I set it up with, I thought, hey, I'll grab server 2008. It's really old. Certainly that must be what we're using in production. Nope, 2003. Create some test accounts, mimic the password complexities. I created one test account for every user in the environment. In hindsight, I'm testing my methodology. I didn't need that many test accounts. It just slowed down my testing, but whatever. And then once you figure out how you're going to do this in test, you're all ready for prod. So, dumping your password hashes. This turned out to be a lot more difficult than I thought. I'm basically an old school Unix guy. I figured cat etc password, cat etc shadow, run them through a John the Ripper tool, combine them, done. No. There was some volume shadow copy work involved. Again, if you want my notes on this, if this is research you'd like to duplicate, I didn't put those. This is, again, slide deck for management. I'm happy to provide you with those notes so that you guys can learn from what I did. It's not easy. So, but how hard was it really? Generally, the way this worked is the company provided hardware and pizza. We went to Microsoft for the pizza, we went to Microsoft for the hardware, we went to Jets for the pizza. And it was a good little team building exercise. We generally did 1 hour a week, got together, usually as a more senior person and a more junior person, kind of picked up where the last person left off and worked through it one chunk at a time. Was a lot of fun, really. So, for production, who's all got virtualized domain controllers? Sweet, this makes it really easy. Get a copy of a production domain controller. Wait, this is not the easy part. What you want to do is make sure that you wait your password expiration. So if you've got a 30-day password expiration, sit on that VMDK for 30 days. If you've got a 90-day password expiration, sit on it for 90 days. If you have a 190-day password expiration, how long do you sit on it? 90 days, exactly. So then once you've got those hashes, run them through your cracking farm, go ahead and crack them. What I did was I set up this whole presentation as a way to lay out the data with the math to show everyone that our password standards were strong enough. So what I did is I talked to my buddy on desk side. Hopefully everybody's got a buddy that does desktop support. I said, give me the oldest, slowest computer you've got sitting around. That's what I used for this. So I could then say, okay, to crack our passwords on one of our standard machines, take almost a year. So we've got I'll go ahead and say it, we have a 30-day password expiration in my company. That's 10 times that. Boom, we're good to go. We have nothing to be worried about. To make the numbers look bigger. Yes, yeah.
What about the kid that's got GPU?
I'm getting there, I'll get there. Yeah. The reason there's a discrepancy between the 295 and the 263, some of the data that I presented here was based on my test environment. Others was done based on my production environment. So the 295 is actually my prod environment. The 263 was the test environment. Did I let this run for the whole time? Oh dear God, no. When you fire up Hashcat, which is what I use, and Hashcat is what I use for the CPU-based cracking. OCL Hashcat is what I use for the GPU-based. Not that I would do that. Because we're just doing corporate standard desktops. We're showing that we are secure. See, we've used math, we proved it, passwords are safe, you have nothing to be worried about. But I have no idea why there are two chairs here. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, I got nothing to worry about. So what we did, I used a real laptop. This is my personal laptop that I take with me to training classes. And all of a sudden now we're down to 43 days. So went from 295 to 43 just by running it on modern hardware. Just CPU. I'm not a fan of laptops. I think they're pretty slow. I'm much more a fan of real desktops, something with a X79, X99 chipset. All of a sudden now you're down to 29 days. Uh-oh. We have a 30-day password policy expiration. So now I got a problem. To the gentleman that pointed out, what about GPUs? I'm guessing, yeah, it's his wife's machine. She just plays Portal, but I had a 550 Ti laying around. Yeah, amen, amen. So yeah, that didn't go nearly as well. So Earlier in the presentation, obviously, I seated some of the guys and girls from my company to prompt me with some questions. I did the same thing during the actual presentation. So as we got to this part, I would have people ask me, what about GPUs? What about, CPUs, faster machines, that kind of stuff. So at this point, I had my boss ask, dude, I approved over $2,000 in expense reports. What did you spend all that money on? So, yeah, we got to play. And I will say, if anyone wants to duplicate this, I really support it. It's a lot of fun. There are problems out the wazoo. Things like finding a motherboard that'll support 3 or 4 video cards is actually not easy. Finding a case that will hold that many video cards is not easy. Finding a power supply that will drive all that, not easy. Cooling was actually the biggest thing. To be perfectly honest, price performance wise, I did not want to go with the 980 Ti. The 980 made a much better way to go. Problem is, all your 980s cool by blowing air perpendicular to the board. If I stack 3 of them in a chassis, they're just blowing air right on top of each other, and all of a sudden all that cooling is for naught. So in order to get the reference cooler, which pulls air in the rear, pulls air in this side of the cards and blows it out this side, that's like a $50 cooler. So I could have bought stock 980s and put a reference cooler on it, but at that point, I may as well just buy the 980 Ti's and 980 Ti's. One of the guys on my team was able to find a website with some test software to really push the cards and see how they would work. It was steampowered.com. He did lots of testing. I appreciated his diligence. Yeah. Yeah, okay. 96%. So, what is not on here that is key, as you are having this presentation and having this conversation with people at your office, you do not want to tell them that you are cracking all of the accounts in the domain. Gentlemen pointed out service accounts, because service accounts are special. There's a flag you set in Active Directory so that the adversary can't use a service account. There are all kinds of special flags you set in Active Directory. So, wait, no, they're just normal accounts, but their passwords don't expire, which is bad. So what we did is through the magic of grep, our end user accounts follow a very specific pattern. So we were able to pull out just the end user accounts. And leave out anything that was a service account or stuff like that. What else is interesting on this slide? 34,000 million guesses per second. So 34 billion guesses per second. That's a lot. To be perfectly honest, I did not dive into why we only had 96%. I just didn't care, to be perfectly honest. I did say we had 5,000 users. No, I didn't. I shouldn't say that because that would give away too much about my company. But we had 13,500 hashes in the data set. So the first thing that I was surprised, we store password history so that you can't reuse old passwords. How many people have a policy that prohibits reusing old passwords? Hopefully everyone. So once you dump hashes out of Active Directory, guess what? You get them all. So we got 6 months of password history for each user. What's that?
All that was in 106 minutes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 13,500 accounts and passwords in 106 minutes. But hey, we're PCI compliant, so it's all good, right? No one has anything to worry about. We've got a rock from the auditor. Yeah, so we're good. Yeah, it's kind of sobering. So let's talk about why we were able to do 34 billion guesses per second. I did a great class, it was the SANS 504 class actually, where we talked about the LM hashing algorithm that Microsoft uses for password storage. And they take a password and they break it up into two 7-character chunks. So cracking two 7-character chunks is just as hard as cracking one 14-character chunk, right? No, it's orders of magnitude slower. To be perfectly honest, it's 7 orders of magnitude faster. And, oh yeah, everything's uppercase, which for password cracking makes it really efficient. So yeah, then we talked about NT hashes. It's still an efficient algorithm, which makes things easy on Microsoft, which is nice. But it's still not a really good algorithm. So in class, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, what's going to be next? What's the thing that Microsoft moved on to after NT? Because, NT came out while, Ashley, do I want to know how old you were when NT came out? No? Okay, good. Sorry, I just hired Ashley from UC. She's a grad as of 2 weeks ago. Yay! Go Bearcats. So, but yeah, NT is kind of where Microsoft said, nope, we're good. NT4, yeah, NT351, yeah, good enough. So, so what can we do about it? So Microsoft has some really bad algorithms for Active Directory passwords, so that's bad. We're not getting rid of Active Directory, because even the guy that did the OS X presentation said he kind of misses Active Directory sometimes. So maybe Unix will be better. So we'll get to Unix in a minute. So, what about Windows 10? Windows 10 does a lot of things to make security better, which is awesome. Who's playing with Windows 10 at home? Who's playing with Windows 10 at work? Wow, more than I expected. Okay, great. Cool. So, got to have backwards compatibility. Microsoft's all about backwards compatibility. So, 8's actually pretty good, but it's still a little worse than 10. So, who's familiar with Mimikatz? Played with it a little bit? Okay. So Mimikatz has been implemented as a module to, is it recall or volatility or both? We'll go with both. And the Mimikatz guys have realized that there's a data structure in memory which contains your password hash. Yay! But if your password is shorter than 14 characters, you also have the LM format password hash, those two 7-character chunks. Okay, that's not really why don't need that, but Microsoft has that in for backwards compatibility. And then there are also an MD digest if you need to provide your password to a website for single sign-on. That hash is there in memory. And then if you're talking to a website that has really bad security, there's also a plain text version of your password because it may be needed. So really, at the end of the day, it all comes down to length. The best way to avoid that 14-character problem is by using a 15 or 17-character password. Anything that you can do to make it longer is really what she said, is what you need to do to improve your capabilities here. So, I hinted about Unix. So, how many people have Unix in their environment? Unix in the environment? Yep, most of you. Which is good. Best practices recommend a homogeneous environment for security purposes because it's very hard to secure one platform. It's incredibly difficult to secure more than one platform. So of course, what do? We run more than one platform. So, if I talk about salts to this group, does everyone know who's not familiar with salts? Cool, I'll cover it real briefly. So, the idea with the salt is that you store a little bit of randomness with your password hash. So that way, so quick digression, let's go back 10 slides. 5,000 users, 6 months worth of history, that's 30,000 password hashes I was working with. But if you remember that slide, we only had 13,500 hashes that we were looking at. So what happened to the other 16,500 hashes? They were duplicates. So if two users use that same password of, Reds 2016, they get that same hash. That's why rainbow tables work. Rainbow tables work because multiple users using the same password get the same password hash. If you add a little bit of entropy to that password, in that password hash field, then when the computer is calculating what your password should be, you type in your password, it's combined with that entropy, the salt, and then used as part of the hashing algorithm to generate your password hash. So, what I did is I created 32,200 accounts along with and then set the password to them. How was I able to do this? Well, obviously I had the usernames. That was really easy. That was dumped from my NT domain controller. But how did I get their plain text password so that I could set them all? Because I just ran hashcat for 104 minutes and then got everyone's password. So it's a pretty simple setup. I used the CentOS 7 box, created a bunch of accounts, set their passwords, and then I was able to dump all those and wanted to crack them to see just how much secure Unix is. I used to say that Unix admins were all the old guys with the big beards, but then hipsters happened and now everybody has a beard. I go to meetings now where I'm the only guy without facial hair. It's kind of bizarre, but anyway. Obviously, I have no fashion sense. This is as good as it gets. So, 32,000 different salts, 32,000 times, 93 minutes was actually how long it took to crack the production environment. The test environment was 104. So, should take 50,000 hours, 32,000 salts times whatever. Nope. So, oops. So why did it take longer? Did my microphone just die? Yeah, I'm good. Okay, good. So, stronger hash. So, excellent question. Gentleman poses, what hash was used on the CentOS 7 box when I created all the Unix accounts? To be perfectly honest, don't care. Use the default. And you bring up a great point. Linux and your various Unix flavors did not decide to stop advancing the password hash technology in 1999 the way Microsoft did. So every couple of years, the Unix platforms moved to stronger and stronger passwords. And the password hash field in that etc shadow file actually includes some notation to say what kind of hash it is and what the format is. So it makes it extensible, which is kind of cool. Something Microsoft could maybe learn from. So, how bad was it? So we were testing 203,000 passwords per second, 203 kilohashes per second. Does anybody remember what the number was for the Windows boxes? Yeah, 32 billion. 32 billion, so this is 200,000. So it's a little slower. Yeah, and SHA 512's answer, yeah. So CUDA hashcat kind of wimps out and just says the estimated time is greater than 10 years. But hey, I'm one of those guys that people look at occasionally and go, you're an engineer, aren't you? And I go, yeah. Oh, yeah. Want to point out, 2 passwords were cracked. One of them was a username of A, password of A. And how long did I let this one run? Does it say up here? 6 days. Where is 6 days I let it run and it got A equals A. Yay! Microsoft is awesome. So, I did the little math, fired up a spreadsheet. Approximately 1 million years. Now, I have heard we've got an NVIDIA 1080 that's coming out real soon. It's supposed to be twice as fast. So we may cut it down to 500,000 years. Yeah. So even her Active Directory domain is now pwned. So, is it really that bad? Yeah. Math proves it for us, which is awesome.
If there's one MD5, that would be a much different.
Yeah, exactly.
You did use
Sure.
SHA-512,
Which,
strong algorithm.
yeah, the SHA-512 is a very strong algorithm, and exactly, yeah.
No argument there, just saying it's apples and oranges.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Windows security to Unix security is apples to oranges. Yeah. But it's expensive. So, no talk on passwords would be complete without the XKCD cartoon about Battery Horse Staple. So it's there if you guys haven't seen it. And this is one that you can use for your management to illustrate the problem. You know, this is not a new cartoon. This isn't something that, is a really narrow focus. I mean, XKCD is one of the more widely read webcomics. So what you're asking your employer to do to change that password policy is really, it's not like you're trying to do anything super weird. There are comics about it, for Pete's sakes. So, how do you fix it? My suggestion, pull Active Directory out of your Quattrodecim sign-on. Don't use the same, this is going to sound crazy, don't use the same passwords on internet accessible machines and for your critical data. So don't use the keys to the kingdom on the same machine that your users are using to open phishing emails. There are ways you can phrase this that sound, I was coached that I was being absurd. But to be perfectly honest, it's what we're doing. This idea is really best practice, or is taught as a best practice, to have few passwords. But in reality, it makes things so much easier for the adversary. So my suggestion, 15 or more characters, 17 is better. You can literally, use my numbers, 34 billion guesses per second, and then whip it up in Excel. So if you've got, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, that's 26 plus 26 plus 10, which is 62. And then let's see, what is it? Then your exponent is the number of characters, or the exponent's the base, and help me out. So if you want to figure out how many possible passwords you have, what's that?
Number of digits is the
Exponent. So you take,
number of possible combinations is the base.
yep, so you've got 62 possible characters, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. And then your exponent is your number of digits. So you take 62, raise it to the 15th power, raise it to the 17th power, divide it by 34 billion guesses per second, and that's how long it takes to crack those passwords. Or go 60 billion password guesses per second if you're using the NVIDIA 1080s that come out in a couple weeks. So my suggestion, long passwords, allow English words. This is where your auditors will, I probably can't say shit bricks. This is where your auditors will push back. But if you show them the math, this will work. If not, get it in writing. Put a liability clause on there. Ask your auditors, ask those people that deal with the auditors to put it in writing that they would rather you have a short, easily cracked, easily guessed password than one that's long, secure, but happens to have English words in it. You're not going to get an auditor to do that. So, the last time I gave this presentation, I was coached that I went too fast. I tried to slow it down today, but apparently I'm all done. Before I go to questions, I will say my team is hiring. Ideally, I would have a link to our website, but they won't let me put that on there. Hit me up after the presentation. Hit me up on Gmail. If you guys can't social engineer and figure out who my employer is, I would be You're probably not my ideal candidate. Let's be honest here. So yeah, hit me up. I am on LinkedIn. And feel free to let me know if you're interested. So, questions? Yeah. Start with the first or second row. Yeah.
Okay, so I know you're touching Windows, but take for example, if you're doing multiple modes of encryption, I think you touched on this.
Mm-hmm.
If I have an encrypted password, I need to do plain text authentication on my protocols because I can't come up to a same
Talking about
algorithm. So then I have an insecurity in my
you talking about like Telnet FTP?
FTP, IMAP, whatever.
Sure. Yep.
So I'm forced to use a plain text authentication mode
Yep.
unless I can find something that I can somehow come up to the same hash.
Right.
Is there anything you can do about that?
So the gentleman's question was about mitigating the risk of using protocols with plain text passwords at the transport layer. So something like IMAP, something like POP3, something like FTP, something like that. I will say this is the one where you really get into the service account conversation as well. The service accounts tend to be high privileged, the passwords don't change, and they're used for FTPing files back and forth. So really no concerns there, they're perfectly fine. With those, you know, how do you mitigate that risk? My answer would just be, what can you do at the network level? Switch networks, of course, help a little. We all know those can be easily defeated. The other thing I would look at in a Windows environment, so I'm going to address this to the general audience. In a Windows environment, where we've got a Windows client talking to a Windows server, the Windows firewall can come to play. How many people think the Windows firewall sucks? Yes! Cool. That means I get to educate you. Yay! So, the first version of the Windows firewall that came out with, what is it, Windows XP? SP2 was the first version of the firewall. Let's just say XP-ish sucked. It was really bad. It really opened up the door to the Symantec's, the Microsoft, McAfee's of the world to create add-on firewalls and charge you money for them. Yay for vendors. But the next version of the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security, actually does some really, really cool things. If you have an AD environment, you can tie your Windows Firewall with Advanced Security into group policy and then make it talk to your CA. So now your Microsoft Certificate Authority can push down keys to all your clients, and your firewall can be configured so that if it's talking to a particular server, I don't know, the FTP server, I don't know, the FTP protocol, to force encryption using IPsec at the network layer. Your protocols and your upper level applications have no idea this is going on underneath. How many people think your Windows firewall sucks now? Yay, you all got smarter.
I use Windows Firewall a lot, but I'm still going to say it sucks because you've got default rules that are enabled that if you use your policy to add more rules to it, those default rules still exist, at least by default.
Yep.
So you have to be aware enough.
There's a lot of tuning required with that Windows firewall. Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm going to do a quick plug for another SANS class. There's a SANS 505 Windows Security with Jason Fossen. If you have the opportunity, I know the SANS classes are a little more pricey than BSides, and if you get the opportunity to take it with Jason, excellent instructor and fantastic material. It really opened my eyes up to how little Windows sucks now. It's gotten a whole lot better. The other thing I will say, if you happen to attend one of the SANS conferences and Jason does his SANS at Night talk on Windows security, go. It's usually scheduled for like an hour, and they usually give them the 8 to 9 p.m. slot. Go have a big meal beforehand, maybe grab a frosty beverage, and get in a comfortable chair, because Jason will talk and drink and drink and talk until midnight. And he's fascinating. You will learn a lot, but a drunk Jason Fawson is a lot of fun. Okay, other questions? Yeah? No. So the question was, did we look at FPGAs? And the reason I used brute force is because it was slow. The point of the presentation and the way I started this talk off was that I am going to present you with math that shows that our 30-day password expiration is sufficient. And then what I did is I let my team call out and just pick apart my credibility throughout the entire presentation. So by the time I was done, there was no way. Yes, FPGAs would be a whole lot faster. The other thing, moving to hybrid attacks, dictionary attacks, stuff like that would definitely get you a whole lot faster. The other thing, if you don't have $2,000 to drop on 980 Ti's, imagine that. AWS. You can get AWS instances with NVIDIA cards in them. I believe they're equivalent to a Titan X. So my 93 minutes may be 2 or 3 hours, and I think I did the math. I'll tell you guys it was, I want to say under $50 in AWS charges. So the amount of damage you can do for, hopefully your company would support you spending $50 on AWS to be able to prove this out to you guys. Yeah.
So a few things.
Sure.
First one was sort of a question. I think I know the answer to this, but somebody that knows more in depth might be able to give you a better idea. So in Windows, if you disable all methods of authentication, I guess, except for NTLM-v2, does it store those weaker versions of the password in memory or in Active Directory?
So the gentleman's question was, if you disable all Windows authentication techniques other than NTLM-v2, will it still store those other password hashes in memory? And I must say, I look forward to your talk next year where you present the results of your research.
Because I know that people do disable all.
Yeah.
You can do that going back to the
My suggestion, grab Mimikatz, get the latest version, and dump memory from not a domain controller, but just a little laptop and see what you get.
I was just going to say, I think that there's a web calculator out there where you can enter in the type of hashing. And
Sure. Oh, yeah.
your set and all that.
But-
It'll give you a link to time.
Yeah, so gentleman points out that there are websites you can go to and plug in hashes, tell it what the algorithm was, and then it can spit back the plain text equivalents. I thought about using one of those, but 3 980 Ti's. Yeah.
SANS put out a blog post probably a couple years ago that even if you're using MTLM version 2, that unless you have a minimum or like a character password exceeding 14 characters,
Right.
it was still in memory.
And that agrees with what I was thinking.
We force character passwords greater.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
It's, yeah.
More amateur question.
Sure.
What was your attempt to mitigate your attack surface for all of those dilemma hashes going across the network?
So to mitigate the NTLM hashes going across the network, what you're hinting at, I'm guessing, is a pass the hash type attack?
Well, pretty much, obviously, it'd be more difficult for the attacker to get your entire BMDK, of your domain controller.
Right.
So, probably easier to get one last on, so.
Right. So,
Reduce the amount.
Sure. The research was predicated on the assumption of an attack, traditional phishing style attack, the adversary gets remote control, remote command execution on an end user's laptop, is then able to escalate privileges, jump to domain, get domain privilege, domain admin, and then you're able to access volume shadow copies, get a copy of the data you need, and you're off to the races. Do you have a question? No? You? No? Okay. Anybody in the wings? Go for it.
So, hypothetical question.
Sure.
Is, you've got a 30-day password history policy right now.
In this.
Recommending moving to a 90 to 180 day password change policy. Let's say you've got an application or whatever where you've got, you're using Shopify 12 and you're using 18-character long passwords.
Sure.
Or longer.
Yep.
Why ever change it? I mean, I understand that, the act and all that, but, in certain cases where, let's say, the endpoint is relatively secure, why would you ever need to enforce password age?
Sure.
Someone will use that same password on another site that doesn't use SHA-512.
Okay, fair enough, but.
And I think, so for those that couldn't hear, the question was about if you've got essentially an uncrackable password using a stored with a strong hashing algorithm that's nice and long, why would you ever force a password change? And a gentleman in the audience points out that that user is likely to reuse that same password on another site, and then remember our list of 40 other sites that our users have passwords for. So chances are one of them does not use a strong hashing algorithm. Chances are one of them is going to get popped. So to me, that still falls into good security hygiene. There may not be a mathematical reason for it. I will say it also forces for the user that security mindset. It lets them know that your central IT group, your central security group can't do all the security for them, that the end user still has to do a lot of it. And so by forcing those periodic password changes, that reminds the user that they still play a part as well. Okay. I'm about out of time. I must say I am absolutely floored that this many people stuck around for the coveted 5 p.m. slot on Cincinnati BSides 2016. So thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it.